It's funny how sometimes the most compelling stories, they just pop up where you least expect them. And I think today's topic is a perfect example of that. You brought in some really fascinating research.
Yeah, absolutely. It hints at maybe a whole new way to think about a condition that, well, it affects so many people.
Right.
We're doing a deep dive into this pilot study from UCSF, and it explores a pretty unconventional idea looking at whether psilocybin therapy might actually help people with Parkinson's disease.
Psilocybin.
Real.
Okay, so the compound in, magic mushrooms, definitely not the first thing that comes to mind for Parkinson's management.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so interesting, right? This initial study was published in Neuropsychopharmacology, which is all about how drugs affect the brain and behavior.
Yeah.
It took a first look, a preliminary look, at how psilocybin might affect some of the big challenges people with Parkinson's face. So our goal today is really to get into the key findings, what these early results could mean, especially for something often underestimated, which is the mood disturbances. And like you said, the results were, well, pretty surprising.
Okay, let's break this down. For anyone listening who maybe isn't super familiar, Parkinson's disease, what is it in simple terms?
So Parkinson's is a progressive condition. Basically, certain nerve cells in the brain, the ones that handle movement, they start to malfunction or die off. It's quite common here in the U.S. Maybe around 1 million people are living with it.
1 million, wow.
Yeah. And the current treatments, like levodopa, which helps replace dopamine, a key brain chemical lost in Parkinson's, they can manage symptoms. Things like tremors, stiffness.
Right, the physical stuff.
Exactly. But, and this is crucial, they don't stop the disease from getting worse. They don't slow it down or reverse it.
And beyond those motor symptoms, the ones we usually think of, this study really highlights another huge part of Parkinson's, the mood aspect.
Precisely. And what's really striking here is how common anxiety and depression are for people with Parkinson's. Sometimes these mood issues can show up years, literally years, before the motor symptoms become obvious.
Years before. Wow.
Yeah. And it's not a small thing. These emotional challenges, these seriously impact quality of life. Plus, there's evidence suggesting a link that these mood problems might even lead to faster physical decline.
That's a really critical connection. So it's not just physical. And this research suggests that the usual treatments for depression or anxiety, like standard antidepressants, they don't always work so well for this group.
That's right. Which really underlines why this UCSF pilot study is so interesting.
Yeah.
The researchers asked a pretty bold question. Could psilocybin, which we know affects mood and perception, could it actually benefit people with Parkinson's dealing with both mood problems and motor symptoms?
Right. Using something known for altering perception to potentially treat a movement disorder, it's counterintuitive.
It really is.
So how did they actually set this up? What did this pilot study look like?
Okay, so it was a pilot, meaning small.
Yeah.
Just 12 participants, 7 men, 5 women. All had mild to moderate Parkinson's. They gave psilocybin twice. First, a 10 milligram dose, then 2 weeks later, a bigger 25 milligram dose.
Okay.
But it wasn't just about the drug. There's a big therapy component. 8 sessions of psychotherapy before and after the psilocybin doses.
Ah, so support was built in.
Exactly. And they measured several things. Mood, obviously, but also cognitive function like attention, processing speed, and of course motor symptoms.
Right. Pretty wide net. And you said the results were surprising. So beyond just being safe, what did they actually find?
Well, first off, safety was the main goal. And the good news is participants tolerated it well, no serious side effects, and it didn't make their Parkinson's symptoms worse. That's a huge first step.
Definitely.
But here's where it got really interesting. They saw significant positive changes, like really noticeable ones.
Okay. Tell me more.
They saw significant improvements in mood, which maybe you'd expect with psilocybin. But they also saw meaningful improvements in cognitive function.
Cognitive too, okay.
And maybe the biggest surprise, they even reported improvements in motor control.
Motor control improved from psilocybin.
That's what they reported. But maybe the most remarkable thing, how long these benefits seem to last. These improvements, mood, cognition, motor accord, they stuck around for several weeks after the psilocybin was out of their system.
Weeks later. That is striking. So not just a temporary lift while the drug was active?
Exactly. That sustained effect is really noteworthy. Think about current Parkinson's drugs. You need to take them constantly. The idea that a short intervention could have effects lasting weeks, that's a different way of thinking about managing it.
It really is. Now, were there any downsides, any negative experiences during the sessions?
Yes, important to cover that. Almost everyone did have some temporary side effects while the psilocybin was active. Things like some anxiety, a bit of nausea, blood pressure went up temporarily.
Okay.
But crucially, none of these were serious enough to need medical treatment. They resolved on their own.
Got it. Provides the full picture. Now, the lead author, Dr. Ellen Bradley, she had some interesting comments, right?
She did. She said the results went well beyond what we expected. And she also stressed something really important, that mood symptoms in Parkinson's, they're actually linked to faster physical decline, and maybe even a better predictor of someone's overall quality of life than their motor symptoms are.
That makes a lot of sense when you think about it. If your mood is low, motivation to exercise or socialize probably drops too.
Exactly. It really highlights why finding effective ways to treat these mood issues is so critical.
So why might this be happening? What are the researchers thinking causes these improvements?
Well, there are a couple of main ideas floating around. One is maybe the better mood is the key. Feeling better emotionally could lead people to be more active, more social.
Like a positive feedback loop.
Sort of, yeah. And all that activity is known to help manage Parkinson's. The other idea, maybe more direct, is that psilocybin itself might be doing something at a biological level. They're thinking about inflammation. Could it reduce brain inflammation? And also neuroplasticity. That's the brain's ability to sort of rewire itself, form new connections, maybe repair damage.
Ah, the brain adapting.
Right. If psilocybin promotes that, could it actually impact the circuits involved in mood, cognition, and motor control? Even raises the question, could it potentially, slow down the disease process itself, maybe indirectly?
That idea of promoting repair, that's really hopeful. And you mentioned this study is a first in a major way.
Absolutely. It's the first time any psychedelic has been formally studied like this in any neurodegenerative disease, not just Parkinson's.
Yeah, that's significant.
Yeah. Dr. Joshua Woolley, the senior author, really emphasized this. He pointed out that for most brain diseases, we just don't have treatments that change the disease's course. We manage symptoms, but we don't stop the underlying problem. So this research, it offers this really exciting possibility. Maybe psilocybin could actually help the brain's own repair systems.
A powerful idea. And it sounds like this pilot study, these promising results, are leading to more research.
Yes, definitely. The UCSF team is already moving ahead with a larger trial.
All right.
A randomized controlled trial, which is, the gold standard.
Bigger scale, more rigorous.
Exactly. They're aiming for about 100 participants, much more diverse group, and they're expanding to a second site, too, at Yale.
Okay, scaling up significantly. And are they using more advanced tools this time to figure out the how?
They are. The larger trial will use things like non-invasive brain stimulation, advanced brain imaging like fMRI perhaps, and other tools. The goal is to get a much clearer picture of how psilocybin is working in the brain, especially looking at that inflammation and a neuroplasticity angle.
Great to see that kind of detailed follow-up. And the funding is there for this next phase.
Yes. It's supported by the same anonymous donor who funded the pilot, and also, significantly, by the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research. Getting their backing says a lot about the potential seen here.
It really does. Okay, so wrapping up our deep dive then, what's the main takeaway from this initial UCSF research?
I think a key message is that this early work offers a really promising signal. It suggests psilocybin therapy could be a completely new avenue for tackling not just the motor symptoms of Parkinson's, but also those really difficult mood and cognitive issues that severely impact quality of life.
And with benefits that seem to last, which is remarkable.
Yeah, that lasting effect is potentially huge. It suggests something more profound might be happening than just temporary symptom relief.
It really does feel like stepping into new territory here, exploring a totally different way to approach these incredibly challenging neurodegenerative diseases. The idea of changing the trajectory, that's a very powerful thought.
Absolutely. And it really leaves you with a question to ponder, doesn't it? These are the initial findings for Parkinson's. What other areas, other neurological conditions or even mental health challenges? Where might rigorous research into psychedelics like psilocybin prove beneficial? It definitely pushes us to think beyond our current treatment models.